Welcome back to the OC. I'm your host, Corey, and this is my co-host,
Bill.
And our special guest tonight is
Gary Reed, Unfrequented World.
Hello.
I love your world.
Thank you.
It's pretty cool. He does everything, man. This guy does everything. Everything from photography to finding Bigfoot.
So what are we talking about tonight, Phil? Have you kept everybody in suspense long enough?
Yeah, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, yeti, yowie. I don't know, swamp ape. There's so many.
Roo.
Right? I don't know. There's
that's not a word.
And then you can say it in as many languages as you could imagine. It's all over the world. It's crazy. So. And Gary,
before we get started, I want to sort of do some housekeeping from last time. So Phil dropped the bomb about Agenda 21.
Oh,
the super sinister
conspiracy
yeah, well, you had mentioned it in the last episode. You said, hey, we should look into this, right? So I figured do a brief look. So Agenda 21 was a non-binding resolution released by the United Nations regarding sustainable development. Mm-hmm. And that's been kind of linked to this Great Reset, this New World Order, which may very well be episode coming to you soon about, how essentially nations are losing sovereignty. And there's this shadow government that's not really shadowy because it's the United Nations. Anyway, interesting stuff. But that's what Agenda 21 is. It was actually from the Rio 19... the UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. So it's not new. So
I'm not allowed to talk about that, guys.
I know. It's above top secret.
Don't know how it relates to Bigfoot, but it may. He is very sustainable. Or she.
Bigfoot does work at Area 51, I heard. He is apparently just got his pilot license. I don't know. Whatever. We hear all sorts of things. So Bigfoot. So I am not a Bigfoot expert. I love Bigfoot. I don't think you are either, Corey.
Up until fairly recently, the most I knew about Sasquatch was that he was a member of Alpha Flight.
Oh, like the cartoon. Okay.
That's not it's a comic book.
It's a
comic book, not a cartoon.
Okay.
It's the Canadian super team. Maybe you've heard of them.
Right. No. Yeah. Captain Canuck.
He was not on the initial one. He was
never. All right. I don't know.
And I think it was Major Maple Leaf. It wasn't Captain Canuck.
So Gary, would you consider yourself a bit of an expert in the field, or are you? I mean,
no, absolutely.
Okay,
not.
Fair enough. I mean, you're a hobbyist of
compared to us. You are Einstein with regards to Sasquatch.
I'm very interested in it, and I read everything, and I follow everything I can get my hands on, anything online, and I do a channel, which one of the series that we do is look for Bigfoot, but by no means am I an expert. No.
So from my reading, that term expert is very vague. And there is only a handful of people that are even one qualified and two, seem to make enough sense.
That's the problem, right? Is the sense aspect, because it is really the whole cryptozoology field is kind of a pseudoscience, right? So it's like you're an expert in a field that is it science or is it?
It's tough because there's some really good stuff out there that I've been watching, and then there's some stuff that's not so great. I mean, it's
Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, I guess. I mean, it's kind of interesting though how this all came about. Like in 1958, there was this article posted in the Humboldt Times. This is going back, and this was the first time that the actual term Bigfoot was used. I don't know if you might know this, Gary, but
I do.
Yeah, so it's kind of, people talked about a wild man or gorilla type beast before this, but this was where it was meant to be sort of a light humored Sunday, expose, little story. And then somehow it got turned into, what was it? It was, there was a show called Truth or Consequence. And these guys, they read this article and they offered $1,000, $1,000 back then in 1958 for the capture or information leading to this creature. And all hell broke loose.
America's Most Wanted, but for Bigfoot.
Well, kind of. Like if you think about $1,000 in 1958, that's like 10 grand now. I mean, it's a lot of dough, and you had, okay, not to you, Corey, you have a Costco.
Okay, no, jerk. So you said you didn't want me to mention Costco. You brought it on. I'm wondering with the rate of inflation, what 1,000 works out. And I don't know if it's 10 to 1. I actually think it's probably more. So 1,000 would probably be more like.
I don't know. I'm just guessing like 10 grand.
Figure that out. That's what Google's for.
Yeah,
you can Google that.
You can probably Google it. So, but anyway, there was, and it all stemmed from this sort of, and it was about loggers in Northern California. And basically, yeah, they said they found prints and they were big. Dude had a big foot. And that's, here we are. So, yeah. Anyway, that's a little history for you.
It's about 1,100. So you were really, it's 11,000. So you were really close.
Was it close? I figured
you were really close.
Grand. You know what? Yeah. Good. So,
go ahead.
If
you want to talk about that as well, Phil, we'll just throw out there that absolutely that was the first big in the media mention.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we can go back and we talk about all the different names for Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
These things have been seen all over the world, like you say, by generations of people. Native tribes all have names in North America. Hundreds of names.
Absolutely, yeah. And but it kind of became mainstream. That's what I was getting like.
Yeah,
that's where it sort of hit the whatever media. Like, I mean, if the internet existed at the time,
not some fellow, a native fellow saying, oh, let this creature be. Let him do his thing. Don't bug him. Don't mess with him or her.
Isn't it actually registered? Aren't they trying to get it registered right now as like get it a proper name other than Bigfoot, like Homo sapien cognatus or something like that? Isn't there a drive somewhere to get that done or something?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that. I mean, a lot of the researchers that I read or saw on YouTube, or Gigantopithecus is sort of the one that they're all,
Apparently Jane Goodall really wants it to exist.
Well, you think about it, gorillas were discovered technically like 1845, 47. Like they were clearly identified as this is. Otherwise, it was a man who was 10 times stronger than a human being. All these things, like it was a bushman, it was this and that, the next thing. And then, hey, we figured out, no, they're gorillas. They're just big gorillas.
And apparently we're related.
Well, I know Phil is.
Well, that's the other thing. I watch YouTube and they're like, yeah, this thing was 6 feet tall and about 300 pounds. And I'm like, wait a minute.
He's even got the right colored beard.
Yeah, right? No, exactly. Phil is a shaved Sasquatch.
Yeah. I mean, seriously.
This is what happens when you domesticate Sasquatches. It's not pretty.
If you wax a Sasquatch, and I have a short inseam. I have like a 30-inch inseam for being 6 feet tall.
I thought that was relating to the waxing comment. I'm like,
no.
I have a short inseam, so it's easier.
It's a much cheaper wax.
Long torso, short little legs.
Short. I do. I have these crazy little legs. So, yeah. Anyway, but there's been lots of creatures and things that people thought were extinct. So I know that one of the theories was that, this could be Gigantopithecus. It actually survived, and it's been living in our boreal.
Isn't that Loch Ness Monster? They're basically thinking it's like a
plesiosaur.
Plesiosaurus. Yeah, exactly. Basically, it's a dinosaur that's, which given the limited geography of the area, it would be odd, but people are still looking. I don't know how deep the lock
didn't
is,
do
but
so well though. Like these large reptiles, like it's not a fish; it's a reptile. So I don't know. I mean, that's another show.
the search for Nessie.
Yeah, but no, there's tons of different animals that were. What's that? The coelacanth, that giant fish. You know, we learned that in school.
Isn't there some though that kind of goes into the, like, you got your megalodons, which are your like crazy super massive sharks, right? Those are the megalodons.
Yeah, but there's no. Yeah,
but then you've got things like the Jersey Devil, which is also considered in the cryptid family with Bigfoot. That, yeah, yeah, it's like a lizardy thing that apparently flies. So
that sounds horrible.
It doesn't, I don't think, has the same longevity as Sasquatch Bigfoot did, right? So you don't see, as Gary pointed out, this all over, like all these native cultures that talk about Bigfoot, right? Or variants of. So
right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know the first thing to start to look for one. Like, what do you do?
That's why we got Gary here.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying, Gary. Like, what the hell? And what would you do if you found one?
Okay.
I mean, that's a serious question, because at this thing, so I watched a video, and these, like, a gorilla cannot throw like a human overhand. So they have to throw things like this, like they're cupping a set of balls. Like they're smacking, right? So anyway, there is an image, and it's called what the hell is it called? Independence Day. Have you seen this? Where it throws a tree? Something in the bush, and these are construction guys, and they're watching this, and this thing is like not happy that they're there, and it throws it. Looks like it rips a tree out of the ground, and it throws this thing probably 35 feet or 40 feet.
That could be you, Gary. You could be getting thrown 35 feet when you got your little butterfly net trying to grab it.
Yeah.
You can see this thing launch. Like,
I have seen that video, Phil, and actually I think that's not called the Independence Day. That's a different one, the Independence Day.
No, the Independence Day is the baby.
Yes.
That's an awesome
but
video.
I have seen both of those, and it does throw. And actually, I think if you watch the logging one, I think the creature, there was a couple of people that have broken this down. Thinker Thunker is like an online.
He's the one I watched. Videos. Yeah, Thinker Thunker.
I think it's actually, it shows an overhand throwing in that video, like a javelin. It almost looks like it's throwing a javelin.
So the one, though I just watched it last night, and it's hard to tell.
It's so blurry.
Kind of like
everything in the Bigfoot world is so blurry.
It's so blurry, Gary. Why is it so blurry? Well, but Thinker Thunker, MK Davis, I checked him out. These guys are experts in their field of just video and taking video and using CGI to actually clean these videos up. And I was really impressed with what they could do, and especially when it came down to the Patterson film. Did you watch the Patterson film, Corey?
I watched the original one, and again got a little motion sick, so I probably
Gary's thinking what I'm thinking right now.
I should have watched the one Gary recommended on our sync session, where it was like, because I was watching the original one, it's like, yeah, that's kind of blurry, and it's like,
yeah. So when he cleans that up, you're just sitting there going, what am I watching right now? Like, this is a very large.
That's what people will be saying about this episode, Phil. What am I watching right now?
What the hell is that? But yeah, it is a very crazy video.
Back to the original question. You're chasing Sasquatch. What are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to
try
do,
and
Gary?
catch him, or you just take a picture, like another blurry, shaky picture? Like, what would your intent? Honestly, Gary, if you caught Sasquatch, what would you do?
My intent is to get good 4K video footage. That's it. I don't want to get close to this thing. I just want a good, realistic video. We're out in the bush all the time. I've got hundreds of hours of video looking, and I think a good camera needs to be used, and something that's actually not just a blob moving off in the background. That's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do this? Like you said, you're going out in the woods. Like, are you, I don't know, digging into the Sasquatch Times to figure out, hey, there's known Sasquatch activity in this area? Or are you literally saying Sasquatch hangs out in deciduous to coniferous forests, temperate forests. They can hang out here. It's fairly isolated. So the whole kind of, if I were looking for an animal like hunting, you wouldn't go and try and hunt in the subdivision, right? You would go out to, this is the terrain the animal should be in.
Sorry, I got cut off.
That was such a great, I was just pontificating. I was saying like the whole idea of, going to a temperate forest, deciduate, like you're not going hunting for Bigfoot in a subdivision, right?
No.
Like you're going to areas.
Or Costco. You're not going there.
And I'm the one who's supposed to talk about Costco. You don't have a Costco. Until you get one, you can't talk about it. Costco. Great place.
Stop interrupting Gary.
But it's that idea of you pick an area because of what?
I pick an area because 25 years ago, I had my own experience here. And after doing research, there were all kinds of things that would pop up right here in Northern Ontario. I mean, we live in a place, there are thousands of kilometers of empty bush up here. You can zigzag your way from here to the North Pole and not hit another community. Mm-hmm. It's just barren, it's swampy, it's Canadian Shield, it has everything that we need. And so back to what my goal was, also my other thing that I do on the channel is I try to use new technology like drones. So my idea is that we have all this swampland up here that you can't traverse through, but if you could put up a drone and go out 6 or 7 kilometers over the swamp, there is a good chance that if this thing is real, sooner or later, somebody would catch one of these things just traipsing across an open spot. You know, it doesn't think anyone's around, and we've got 4K recording drones. And that was part of the idea, is to use the new technology as well and get into these places that other people aren't going.
What kind of range do you have on a drone? Like if you were, like.
So my drone on a good day I can go up to, it says about 8 kilometers, I think, in the manual, but really it's more like 4 kilometers with perfect ideal conditions. Now there are newer drones that will do even better, but I've got the DJI, one of the first ones that came out, Mavic Pro, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know what the Costco sells one.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Down the Costco hole. So, and now that's 4K on this drone.
Yes.
Well, right. Like these are good cameras. They're,
very good cameras. Yeah.
And what's the zoom on it? Like, is it something like you're sitting there with the controller, you've got the screen in front of you, and you can have the camera zoom in like what, 2 times, 5 times?
No. So on the newer Mavics, you have zoom, but on mine, there's no zoom. It's wide angle. I don't know if it's 25 millimeters, something like that.
Okay.
Huh.
Your zoom is basically your speed. Okay. Put the thing on high speed and go. I've crashed the drone 11 times. That's what I'm an expert at. Drone crashing. There you go.
Here on the OC next time, drone crashing.
That's right, drone crashing. Hellstrike, that's right. It's modified Hellstrike missile. It's
perfect.
It's Gary bringing his DJ in for a landing.
Right. That's right. Now I did look up the Temagami. I remember we had chatted about the Temagami incident, which was an older couple.
Heber.
What's that? Sorry.
The name was Heber.
Heber. Okay. Yeah. So it was a husband and wife. Anyway, it was 2011, I believe, and she had spotted this thing just standing there staring at her. And they got some pictures. The pictures are very, I don't know.
Very big footy.
Well, I guess they are. I mean, you have to. There's so much out there, and I don't claim to be an expert. I find that the face is not. You can't see any features. It always tends to be this sort of. You're not getting a very clear shot.
Obscurity. So you see a lot of hair. You see the back of the creature, but you don't see facial.
That's right.
You don't have a video reference, so you can't see blinking eyes or breathing nostrils.
Right.
And that's my problem with the still picture, is it's just not enough. You have to get video, I think.
I would have to agree with you. And there are some videos out there that are, you kind of go, holy, geez. If this is fake, then it's a good fake, like that Independence, which people do claim they can see a zipper or something, but Thinker Thunker is like, okay, I'm not sure what you people are seeing, but when he breaks it down,
With the juvenile one you guys were talking about, was that the one where it was like some people think it's like was a bear with mange and not an actual?
I
know there was one. There was one they said we got footage of a juvenile Sasquatch, and there's the controversy is like, well, no, that's just a bear with mange.
No, that was actually just a photograph from a trail camera. I think the one you're talking about, Corey.
Yeah.
Bear with mange. Yeah.
The Independence Day was an actual video where you see the creature walk by. It dips down behind a big rock, and it comes up, and it's holding a young one, a baby. And then it exits out the way it came in. And when they broke that video footage down, there is a spot in there that you can actually see the baby moving. So not only would you have to have a person in a costume to do this, but then you need animatronics of the baby. I think its head.
I guess you could do a sock puppet, I suppose, but I mean,
it would be much more intricate and hard to do.
So in the video I watched with Thinker Thunker, I'm not sure his name. That's his. He believes there may even be two babies attached to this bipedal creature.
The other like the little monkeys that cling to the fur.
Well, you can actually see the hand of this little guy holding on to mom, and mom's hauling ass. Mom's not just like, you know, she's moving, and they have this weird way of moving, and they relate it to like how you would ride a bicycle. You know, the elevation of the knee comes up much higher than a human, right? We're just not built that way. And so it becomes this weird, you watch it and it's almost comical because you're like, oh, you know, like they're kind of just got this weird, you know, gait. And you see it in the Patterson film, you see it in the Independence film, you see it in a lot of other films because they're, you know, they're not human from what I'm seeing anyway. I mean, and it's hard for a human to fake that, especially at speed. Anyway, yeah, and they're big.
Well, having your eyes covered with a full face mask or whatever you would need,
it's not going to happen.
Traipse through the bush to do this too.
Probably the fifth take or something, right? All the other ones they're floating down in the river downstream because they've all tripped and fallen trying to run, you know, in summer weather with a big fuzzy jacket on.
I can't see that. I don't. I mean, we've all been through the wilderness. I mean, Corey and I spent most of our youth. I mean,
when you talk about bad bush up in northern Ontario, yes, it is.
It's thick bush up in northern.
Not good.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But
the waxing comment, right?
Waxing comment, yeah. Wilderness survival.
I'm not touching that. I'm sorry.
No, don't do it. But yeah, I do like the videos where there's a scale, like something that they can actually go, okay, this thing was 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall. And there's a couple out there, MK Davis does, where it looks like a Bigfoot stepping into a pit. Have you seen this one? So it looks, he stepped and his back, no, it's Thinker Thunker, my bad. So this Bigfoot steps into this pit, but its back leg stays attached to basically to the top of the pit where it launches itself off. So this Bigfoot steps into this hole, which is about 5 feet deep, they're estimating, based on the height of the guy that was standing in the hole. And he does it in such a way that the back leg stays attached to the top, almost like it's holding on, so that their foot is almost like hinged, you know, like a gorilla.
Oh yeah, like a prehensile foot.
More toes in the foot, yeah, and that's why the weight distribution. That's why they talk about all these prints and the weight distribution of this animal is, you know, we walk heavily on the ball of our foot. You know, our energy is distributed more, you know, from ball to heel as we walk, right? Or feel the ball. Where these guys are landing flat, right? When they walk. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but
yeah, I'm not sure either. And I'm not trying to cut you off. But
thanks, Corey.
I sort of want to come back to Gary. You said about your experience, Gary.
Yes.
You said you had an experience, a encounter of some sort, or you had your own personal. And if it's the trauma's too much, you know, feel free not to tell us about it. I can understand these can be pretty trying times, but I suspect you're going to tell us about.
Gary's a tough guy.
I definitely can tell you about it. It's on my channel. It's something I did not see a creature, but many years ago, I was 18, and right here in Temagami, which those other pictures that you guys were talking about came from, in that same area, I had a friend that had a camp up there, and we used to hunt up there. We used to go up there when we were kids, and as I got older, his dad was always looking for extra guys to come out on the moose hunt, and so I turned 18 that year.
He's keeping us in suspense now.
Hello, Gary. Hi.
And keep getting cut off.
You were 18. You were in college doing some experimenting up in Temagami.
No, I wasn't. I actually took a year off. I hadn't started college yet. So this was my last hurrah, right? So I decided to go up there for the moose hunt with these guys. And it was during that trip, actually, there was 4 of us that went. And we'd been up there for about a week. We were doing 2 weeks of hunting. And 2 of the party decided they were going to camp out. We had a trail beside Brian's camp that went way up, it took an hour to get up to this marsh system up above. And 2 guys decided that they were going to camp out there for the night to get an early start in the morning. And Brian and I went back to the camp and we ate dinner, played some cards. By 10 o'clock, we were hitting the bunks. I didn't drink back then. I was a kid. Brian had a couple beers and he was in his bunk snoring. And I heard this screaming that I can't even describe, other than I honestly thought there was a woman being murdered right there on the deck of the cabin, or just past the deck of the cabin. It was so loud. It was so, instantly sat bolt upright in bed. It lasted, 6-8 seconds, something like that. And it just froze me in terror. And before I could even swing out of the bunk to get Brian, either that creature or another, whatever it was, had moved over to the side of the cabin and screamed again, right under the window, right beside where my head was. And absolute terror. I'm actually getting goosebumps just telling you guys. And it was the scariest, loudest. You could feel the scream. You could feel it. It was so loud. Think of like a train whistle, like that intensity of just shake you. And it was like a woman screaming. And
I'm married, Gary. Brian. I hear women scream at me all the time. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's not the you didn't take the garbage out scream, Phil. This is the I'm being murdered scream.
Yeah, this is not good. Not good at all.
And I woke Brian up and we listened again intently, didn't hear anything. And he went, back to bed and just didn't say too much about it that night. I actually went and got my gun and put it beside my bed. I leaned it against the wall and I put shells right there on the dresser beside me because it freaked me out that bad. And that probably would have been the end of it, except the next morning when I got up and we were eating breakfast, Brian goes on to tell me that, whatever you heard last night, I wouldn't worry about it. Probably just a screech owl or something. He says, 20 years ago when him and the old crew, his brother-in-laws and whoever were up there, he said, we had something, he said here, that it screamed, it banged on the cabin. He said, we thought it was going to break the door down. We didn't know what it was. He said, that was terrifying. And I'm trying to tell him, Brian, this is what I heard last night. I heard the same thing as this. Unbelievable. And, we finished breakfast and it's not like we went outside to look around even. Brian was just, that's it. You heard something. It was an animal and we're moving on. We didn't look for tracks or anything. And in my own head, there was no such thing as Bigfoot, really. Back then, 20 some years ago, it wasn't a cultural thing where I grew up. As I've said on my channel, the only instance I knew of Bigfoot was from a show called The $6 Million Man.
Absolutely. Andre the Giant.
There was an episode.
It was a great episode.
The family, there was a psychic family too.
I don't remember that.
There was an episode where they had the Bigfoot. It was the family that he had to use a special eye to see. And I remember Bigfoot ripping his arm off or something.
Yes, Bigfoot ripped his arm off. That's the only part I remembered. And that was the only thing that I could really say, that I knew what a Bigfoot was, but I never put it in the context of that being what we heard that night. And we didn't look for tracks. We didn't look for any disturbances around the camp or anything. We just carried on with our day. And I'll actually share something with you guys. I've never really shared on my own channel, but how that hunt ended was we went up behind Brian's camp through the swamp. There's a trail that goes to a swamp, and then canoe up through this little tiny river. And they dropped me off about a mile up above the camp, and they left me on watch alone. And two of them went up further up into the lake. And when I was there, the whole time, I had this terrible sense of something's there watching me. And then all of a sudden, I could hear breathing. I could hear like exhaling. And I'd been there a couple hours at that point, and I couldn't see anything. And I actually was so terrified, I couldn't go anywhere. They had dropped me off by canoe.
Jeez.
And finally, I saw them coming back in the canoe, and I started waving for them. And again, I told Brian, I said, there's something in there. It's breathing. It's moving. I can't see it. And he says, oh, that's a moose. You heard a moose. And I just, being an 18-year-old kid, I was just kind of, okay, maybe they're right. But I was never happier than to get in that canoe and go back to camp for lunch. Well, in the afternoon, we went up the mountain trail, and my watch was up in the swamps up there above. And the whole time I was up there, I just had this sense of I'm being watched. There's something here. It's following me. I couldn't shake that feeling. I spent another 4 hours up there that afternoon, and that was it. On the trail back down to the camp that night, I told Brian, we had a full week left of hunting. And I just told him, I said, you got to take me home. And they had to take me home by boat. They had to, and then drive me 40 minutes by boat, load up the truck, and then drive me an hour home because I said, I'm not staying here. I can't finish this hunt.
Wow.
And it was that bad.
Wow. All right.
It takes a lot to admit that, Gary. I mean, seriously, right? I mean, but I don't blame you.
It is what it is. I'm not going to profess to be something I'm not. And I was terrified. And honest,
for sure.
To this day, guys, on my channel, I went back up to Brian's camp. I've been up there a few times over the years. There are other stories that Brian told me that all fit into this growing terror I had, right?
Right.
But over the years, I had gone back up 4 or 5 times for guy weekends. I was convinced to go up, but I never go out of the camp at night. If we have a campfire or something and there's 5 or 6 of us around, yes. But I don't go out by myself up there. I didn't wander around, and I never went up there hunting again. And I never went in the bush up there canoeing, fishing. I just basically would go up to the camp, hang out with the guys, and that's it. And and to this day, I couldn't bring myself, even for my own channel, to go camp out up there by myself. Not a chance.
Wow.
So funny. So with that, has there been anything about how territorial or how much area Bigfoot, Sasquatch would cover? So, normally there's like a range they rove, right? So this becomes, you could almost say, I don't know, 25 square mile radius or whatever, pick a number. Is there anything like that that's out there that because you say this is something where you go and you check, you're not camping there, but this is still one of the areas you sort of keep an eye on, right? Just because you've had encounters there.
Yes. So the way you have to look at this, Corey, is that these aren't a known real thing proven by science. So in my mind, the way I look at this, I'm a biologist. I have a biology degree. You would look at a similar animal that has the same requirements as the Bigfoot, a 600, 800 pound animal, omnivore.
Yep.
What would the range be? What affects them in terms of winters and things, cold up here? Do these things migrate? My theory is when Brian told me that they were up there hunting and they had heard this screaming thing at the camp, it was in the fall. We were up there in the fall. So, I kind of put this together that maybe these things move through here. Winters are so harsh up here and north of here. Maybe they just move through here in the fall, heading south to easier, winter grounds.
Okay.
Makes sense.
But
migratory patterns.
What they eat and things and range, you would have to assume like maybe bear. So a range of, 100 kilometers might be something that.
And grizzly bears are known to have a huge range. I mean, and a grizzly bear would be of a similar weight. Black bears tend to be much smaller, right? So, but they can go for miles because they're, and now something as big as a grizzly bear survives off of berries and, shrubbery and all sorts of stuff.
Whatever it can get its hands on, I think.
Fish, a huge, and I can't see something that big and that fast. I'm sure it can run down or trap larger animals if it had to, presumably to eat.
Yeah,
Well, deer.
I don't think it's petting them, going,
Deer.
oh, good deer. Maybe, or maybe it's not even. Maybe it's not omnivorous. Maybe it's a completely vegetarian. Maybe, you know, like it's
Area of the Hendersons.
it's a herbivore. It could be now.
Possible.
I don't think I don't know of anything that's our side, like, you know, human-like, that isn't omnivorous.
Yeah.
Or carnivorous. Like, I don't think we have herbivores that are tall. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
No, there are a lot of theories that it's, you know, a main staple would be the deer and things like that, that they're running them down, like you say. A lot of channels and things online have evidence of deer carcasses and things that they find, and whether there's anything to that or not. I would think, like you say, they're going to have to eat both to survive up here. That's just, you know.
For sure. Now, a lot of what I was watching, they're like almost a pack animal from the way people are describing. You know, they're not a solitary creature.
Okay, so because most of the stuff I've seen has all been the solitary. Again, I mean, you might have some young, but I don't necessarily see them running in.
So,
like, I'm just curious where.
If you watch the some of the, like, the MK Davis, in the background of a lot of these like videos, he's picking out. There's another one sitting here. There's one he can make out the facial features of another one, and you look and you're like, oh my god. So you're seeing one, you know, it's a lot like wolves, you know, like when a wolf, you know, you see one, yeah, that's great, but there's others that are watching you. You know, like, you're seeing that one because that's a predatory way that they you know, hunt, you know, expecting you to go the way that, you know, they're ambush predators, right? Not to say these things are obviously.
Well, if they're related to the great apes, any of the great apes all operate in packs or tribes or whatever.
For sure.
Whatever the term is for a gaggle. I don't know if
I do not believe it is a gaggle.
A herd of Bigfoot. Yeah.
A herd. Yeah, exactly. Again,
yes. A herd of Bigfoots. Yeah. So I don't. I mean, that's something interesting too, that I'm sure that, who knows? We don't.
So again, we have to keep that in context too, right? That these things are unproven. We don't have any evidence that is actually stacks up to anything. So what you have to assume there is that these things are so rare, right, that there are people seeing them all over, but they're rare enough that it's not commonplace. We don't have a body. We don't have any bones. We don't have any, you know, we don't have any proven DNA. Now, there are certain studies that have been done that say they have unknown DNA, or the Ketchum study. I don't even want to go into that, where we're talking about, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Melba Ketchum study.
No. I heard of Ash Ketchum from Pokemon.
No.
Is that not the same thing?
No, wrong story.
Sorry, just went full nerd. Stop.
When did I stop being full nerd? And it's geek, not nerd.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so there are studies that do purport to have DNA that were collected from all different places all over the world, 80 samples and things like that. But nothing's been proven, right? So what we have to do is look at it in the context of biology again and say, what is the breeding population for any wild animal population to be sustainable? And the minimum number there that they talk about in biology is 500. So you'd be looking at a minimum of 500 of these things to maintain a population, but few enough that we don't have a body, or they're not being photographed and seen clearly as a commonplace thing, right? So
it's fun. Now, I watched a show on, sorry to cut you, but African pygmies. All right, something interesting. So African pygmies, they were founded. I know you're like, where's the connection here? What is he going? Where is he going?
Small?
They're very small. Yeah, average height of a male, I think, was 59 inches. Anyway, so a lot of anthropologists are trying to figure out, well, where did this size differential happen? Where on the planet? About 30,000 years of evolution here. You know, they cannot find a single fossil or pygmy bone anywhere to determine in this vast area of Africa, where there upwards of 1 million of these, they expect 1 million of these tribal units would have lived. Zero to do DNA, you know, kind of see where their bone structures had changed, right? Obviously, you're going to take a femur from a you know, a full-grown man, and then eventually, you know, you start to find bones that are much tinier.
Alien transplants, Phil.
I'm not
Aliens.
sure.
Aliens.
You know, it must be. It's always aliens.
It's aliens.
That's right. It's always aliens. But I mean, that's interesting stuff too, where you're like, okay, well, there's no DNA for pygmies. Well, so is it unrealistic to think there's no DNA for Bigfoot?
Well, it has to do with some of the other stuff too,
you know?
right? So the idea that when you look at the collection, when you talk about DNA, right? So Jane Goodall was like, well, if you can't find bodies, that's really hard, because assuming they're not intelligent enough to bury their dead, or you know, dispose of them in a manner, you know, befitting of kings, or go fire, assuming they're not eating them, which is, you know, that happens.
They're dead. Weird.
Well, no, but that happens. I mean, humans will eat their dead depending on how bad things are, and some
Or
of the
how
great
they
apes
died.
are. Well, again, see the previous episode about COVID. I'm pretty sure that's one of the conspiracies, that eating the dead, right? But it's the other stuff too, right? So scat, like I think they found some tufts of hair that they said this is not like some of the evidence that has been found has been saying, well, no, this is something else. So it's really that you got some imprints of foot, and you got some video footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Gary's experience. Those are the three pillars of our Bigfoot theories.
I'm going with
the
Gary.
The experience is a big part of it, because there are thousands of people that have these experiences.
Thousands.
Yes. Sightings as well as audio, you know.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, there are obviously a lot of cases where it is misidentification and things like that too.
Or outright hoaxes, but I think all the outright hoaxes have kind of been identified. It's the ones that are like, well, no, this is what I saw. I don't know if it's Bigfoot, but it's what I saw.
Yeah, and I like the Thinker Thunker guy and MK, because they're not saying
we're gonna have to link this video.
I'm going, but okay. You know what? They should have credit, because they're putting in a lot of time. I understand, because I use software not for that purpose, but I mean, I get there's so much time involved in doing this layer by layer stuff. And they're only doing it for the benefit of, you know, their channel, or I'm sure they're not getting rich doing it.
Depends how many views they have, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean,
they might be getting rich.
They might.
Subscribe
to Gary and maybe us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's do some cross-linking here.
Yeah, we need the money. Anyway, I like that.
Yeah, because smart people do YouTube for money.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, because that's where the money's at.
I guess I'll have to keep with my day job.
You'll be able to see Phil's influencer channel, where he does various waxing products. He tests them on parts of his body. You get to pick.
We were going to introduce that in the next episode, but you've ruined it. So now, hold on.
Did you braid your chest hair for this episode, Phil?
I'm going for the beard to chest hair braid. I want one continuous braid all the way down
to meet the lightning bolt. Gotcha.
That's right. Back to what I was saying. I like that they're using a scientific method to kind of look at this objectively, and they've pointed out a lot of fakes. You know, so they're not just there, because I think you can become very skewed with, oh, well, this is a Bigfoot. That's Bigfoot. It's
confirmation bias, right? So you see stuff that you want to believe, and it's like, well, this supports what I want to believe, so therefore I believe it, right? So
and
if you're doing Bigfoot, chances are everything looks like Bigfoot to you.
But there is a handful of people out there that are trying, and even when I watch your channel, Gary, like, you're like, well, that could be just another noise. But I'll leave it up to you. You judge, you know, and I like that. I can respect that. Where if I'm like, that's a Bigfoot, and I hear a stick break, I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, we have to be objective. And these guys, this MK Davis and this Thinker Thunker, they really are. They seem to be objective, and they're looking just at the data that they have in front of them.
So I haven't watched any of it, so forgive my ignorance.
It's good.
Yeah, but then I'm missing other vital. Like, I'll never finish The Mandalorian then.
Wow,
I could throw out, just for the sake of linking as well, there is another one that's pretty good too. I don't know if he's still doing videos, but Bigfoot Tony, he did a lot of analysis stuff as well.
Really? I've only recently kind of got into, I think you were the one who kind of pushed me into MK Davis, and that led me to Thinker Thunker, right? Because there's a few of these guys,
I can
and
imagine so.
they're legit. Like they're
So back to that legitimacy comment there.
Yeah.
Do they go off and come out and say, yes, this is clearly not a fake and that's Bigfoot? Or do they say, we can't prove that this isn't true? Like, because you said that, okay.
That's right. They basically go, okay, well, look at the gate. Now you try it. You try and walk this way.
Yeah,
and this thinker thunker fellow's like, here, I'm going to try and take a step off of 3 or 4 steps.
Just like the OJ trial.
Right. Doesn't it? Anyway, yeah. So I do like the objective stuff, and I think that there is something more to this, that there's always that possibility, and I love that. I totally join you, Gary. I will go to this place with you and wear a meat suit.
It's funny you mentioned the meat suit, because I could have one made for you.
I have no intention of wearing a meat suit. I have no intention of wearing a meat suit. However, I don't camp anywhere near as much as I'd like to, as long as we're not doing it during either not winter or like the middle of summer where it's 40 degrees and I get to sleep in the man steamer, because that's not fun.
So we're gonna do this when it suits Corey, not Bigfoot.
Right.
Listen, I'm pretty sure Bigfoot isn't roaming around in winter, and during the height of summer, I'm thinking like a temperate. Bigfoot seems like a temperate kind of person.
He's too hairy to be temperate. I sweat like crazy in the summer. Imagine a Bigfoot.
Exactly. See, so that's more of a late spring, early fall kind of Bigfoot thing. Actually, you said you encountered in the fall, right?
Yes. So both my instance and the one Brian had many years before occurred in the fall. Perfect. Also, I'll tell you guys as well, there are more than those reasons to go back up there. This place is so isolated. Like when you get up to Brian's camp, there isn't another camp for a mile around on the lake to get in there. But then you go behind his camp. Like I say, there are literally hundreds of empty miles of swamp up there. And Brian told us before he found footprints up in the swamp, bare footprints. Now, I've mentioned on my channel, Brian thinks that he bought the land off of natives. It was a native lease for many years, 20 some years he leased it. And then just in the last 8 or 9 years, he was able to buy the property. But he always told me when we were kids and when we hunted up there that he thought there were still natives running around in the bush up there. And they didn't want him interacting on their property. And he always had this, he called him the man. He always said that anything that strange that happened up there was the man. He always assumed it was a native guy that lived up in the bush, off grid, and he wore a red coat. Brian would always say, well, I saw the man. He was up on the ridge. He's always wearing a red coat. Or when we came out of the marsh, we were fishing and we saw the man. And that's the way Brian looked at it, was always natives interacting. So when he found these footprints up there in the swamp, he said they were about 9 or 10 inches long, 5 inches wide. He just assumed, or he honestly believed, that they were made by natives. And he said there was a smaller set of tracks there as well, like kids.
Barefoot.
Barefoot.
Really? Interesting. Okay, that is
absolutely.
Now, do you think there would still be I'm assuming they wouldn't still be there now? Like they weren't like super deep that you'd go off and dump plaster in them, or are we going to be looking for? We're going to be looking for footprints, aren't we?
We're not going to find those footprints, Corey.
I would have assumed that they were never there because, I mean, there's no buildings. There's no. I don't know. I honestly never agreed with Brian on that. It's not like there was a tribe of nomadic natives moved. Like you would see campsites. You would see.
Yeah, you'd see some signs of civilization.
Right. Yeah. How would they cook their food? How would they stay warm? I mean, you need to do all these things, right? Which has an impact on the environment that you live in, of course.
We used to do pretty good when we pick up. So in scouting, when we would set up camps, I mean, I don't think we ever just left behind footprints. I think they said, leave nothing behind except footprints. But we we did a pretty good job of making sure that, any latrines were filled in, right? Any areas,
right.
But you could still clearly see, here's where somebody camped because
for sure,
because all the brush was tamped out. Like it was
you got to cut wood, you got to have a fire, you've got to,
exactly.
There's all these signs that you're going to leave behind. I've never seen any of those signs up there. I mean, maybe Brian has at some point. I don't know. There must have been something that made him think that there were natives living up there. But I'll tell you guys. So along with this story of the banging on the camp and the screaming and that, you know, he told all kinds of stories. Like there was another time that him and the 4 guys went up through this little creek. It's maybe 8 feet across at the widest. And it goes up a couple of miles behind the camp and it opens up onto this lake. And it's full of great big pike. And they used to canoe up there to get to the far end of the lake to moose hunt. And they went up there one morning. And when they came back out, he said there was a log, you know, 30 inches in diameter that had been dragged across the river. And it was blocking them from coming back down with the canoe. And Brian knows that land like the back of his hand. He'd been up there, you know, he'd owned that since the early 70s or maybe even late 60s. And he said, I don't know where this log came from. And there was no trail in the swamp grass, you know, where somebody had dragged this out there. And he said all 4 of them had to get out of the canoe and they could hardly lift this out of the way, the 4 of them. Wow. And they had no idea how this thing got there. And again, Brian will say, you know, well, the natives were telling us you were going somewhere you shouldn't have gone. And I'm thinking, that's not normal.
Why does it sound like this Sasquatch trip is going to become more like Blair Witch and you're going to get this shaky video footage of Gary with his 4K?
Me running in the meat suit.
That's Phil running in the meat suit. I don't know where I am. I'm probably part of the meat suit at this point.
On my back. Great. That's all we need.
It is what it is. Another story, Corey, if you want to get into strange, okay, I'll just fire this one out there. He had a canoe go missing. Okay, I'm not sure if it was a 12-foot or I think it was a 16-foot canoe is what he told me. And the first time he told me, this was after the hunting incident. We were up at a guy's weekend. He told me, hey, one of my canoes went missing. Well, in 2012, we had another guy weekend and we went back and he told us that weekend, he said, by the way, we found that canoe. They went up through the swamp, up to the lake. And on the far end of the lake, he said about a mile past the lake in a 100-foot spruce tree, 50 feet up the spruce tree tied was the remains of his canoe.
That requires some motivation to do that.
Now, Brian will tell you, he says, well, I said, what do you think did that? And he said, well, it's just kids playing pranks or something.
I would have stopped. I would have stopped at 20 feet. I think I would have stopped at 20 feet.
I'm like, kids don't do that. You know, there's nobody there to do that. So
right. Yeah, that would be something to see. Is it still in the tree?
I don't know.
How would you get it down?
I'm assuming he never took it down. Maybe we need to do an expedition to find the canoe.
That would be pretty cool.
Phil can call 911.
Okay.
Again, why you shouldn't use your phone to videotape podcasts.
My phone is, yeah. For the viewers, I accidentally called 911 during this podcast and then had to call police to let them know that I was okay.
Never, okay, kids, never hang up after you call 911. Stay on the line, explain everything, say fat fingers, and you don't just hang up because they're going to call back. In my
defense, it made weird noises. I've never heard my phone do that.
Have you looked out front? Are they surveillance in place right now?
You heard me talking to them, Gary.
I know.
Okay.
Telling them I'm very sorry.
So that's it. So we're thinking in the fall, regardless of whether this podcast keeps going, because at the rate Phil wants to do 1 episode a week by the fall, what will I be, like 100 episodes or something like that? Because
oh my God,
I think that's overly ambitious. However, I am
wasn't
totally
it your idea 1 a week? I thought that was.
What do you mean my idea 1 a week? I was like, hey, let's get a bunch in the bag first before doing it. And maybe 1 a week is a little bit much. You're going to go off last week's episode, Sunday morning, 6 o'clock. I'm drinking coffee. I get a text saying, I'm editing the video. And I'm like, what video? Well, the one we did last night. I want to get it up today. What the hell?
You know how I am.
Yeah, he's gung ho.
Yeah, right. They got to admire the enthusiasm.
Or I'm bored.
But I am totally in for this. So it's something we'll hopefully kind of touch on a future episode, and it might be the Bush edition or maybe the end of the podcast because we're all dead in the woods, because what happens at Brian's cabin stays at Brian's cabin.
That's what Now it does correlate with hunting season as well.
I think we should do late summer to avoid hunting season.
Okay, yeah, because I don't want to have to wear, not that wearing bright orange vests aren't awesome, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
Not to have a bunch of people running around with guns.
Let's aim for August because there's no bugs, it's still warm, and there's no hunters. So we
Very true.
Yeah, and I guess
Very
the hunters would also. So that's the thing, right? If we're actually seriously looking to do this, the last thing we want is a bunch of yahoos running around with guns scaring off Sasquatch.
Other than Phil.
Other than Phil. Yes.
Bear spray and guns.
Phil already told me if he goes, he's packing.
You're damn right. And I'll tell you why. Because not all these stories are nice about Bigfoot. Okay. These things aren't, from what I'm gathering, they're like people. And you get some good ones that are a little curious. And then you get the other ones that are like, fuck you. I'm going to rip your limbs apart. I don't want to meet that one. And if I do, I want a solution.
It would make great footage for my channel, though, Phil. So
dying or shooting one? What?
Either way.
Did you know, like in Oklahoma, they've created like a license to hunt Bigfoot? It was on the news. I just watched this. Okay, in Oklahoma State, they've created the Fish and Wildlife.
That's the place, the Oklahoma bomber.
I assume. I don't know. I think it's Oklahoma. It's one of these places. It's a state. You Google Bigfoot hunting license. You can't miss it, I'm sure. And so you'll be able to buy a license to hunt Bigfoot.
So everywhere else in the world, they're like pro Bigfoot. We need to establish that it's real first. Then we need to protect it. And Oklahoma's like, fuck that. We're just going to shoot it.
We're going to shoot Bigfoot.
It's like the wild pigs, right? Maybe they've got a lot of Bigfoot running around, rummaging through RVs, looking for picnic baskets. Who knows?
This is it. Well, that's the thing. Well, Canada established a no hunting or something to do with like Bigfoot, right? Am I wrong about that? Or is that, I read that in the news.
I don't know that it was Canada wide, but there are certain areas that, yes, they have established where they.
That if you see a big hairy guy walking through the woods, don't shoot him. If you see let me get this straight. If you see a human-shaped object moving through the woods, don't shoot it. That just sounds like good hunting advice.
It's like people who you don't want to have an open season on humanoids.
Yeah, exactly right. I thought he was Bigfoot. I do wonder when you think about the number of hoaxes that people have tried to be clever. Like I heard of one guy who got run over by a car in a ghillie suit playing to be Bigfoot, and he got hit by a car.
Yeah, joke's on you, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that. But I do believe that if there are people that go missing, missing 411. I don't know if you've watched they have a Bigfoot episode. It's pretty compelling, and he doesn't go in and say it's Bigfoot, but what he says is these are people that disappeared that had lots of hunting experience, and they just vanished, just like that.
It is really odd when you hear about that, right? You hear people that are experienced outdoors. People,
hunters in particular.
Yeah,
So.
Actually, I have something I can show you guys. The guy David Politis, who does Missing 411, before he did Missing 411, cut and edit this, Phil. I'm going to go grab a book. He wrote a Bigfoot book.
Really?
I'll be right back. Give me 1 minute.
All right.
Okay, so the Hoopa Project. Not a lot of people know. He actually wrote 2 Bigfoot books. And he was a police officer for 25 years.
Yeah.
And what this book is essentially it's cases. And it's actual, he has a forensic sketch artist who goes and meets with the people. There's some photographs, but there's a lot of sketches and stuff in it. And it's just case files where he investigated on this one Indian reserve, the Hoopa people. And so it's very interesting. I'll lend it to you, Phil.
Oh, perfect. The Hoopa Project is called?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, it was. He's quite interesting, and he goes into he's very systematic, being a police officer, missing persons and what have you, and a lot of it is like parks in the United States, right? Like these big, and some of these parks in Northern California, like a lot of people go missing, like really experienced hikers, campers. Really experienced hunters, especially, and like in weird situations, like all 3 of us go out for a hunt, and this one in particular is this old guy. He's older. He doesn't want to go, like blasting the mountain type idea. So he says, "I'm just going to stay close to the vehicles," and he ends up about 150 yards from his truck. The vehicles were from one park. And the other guys come back and then they say, like they're looking for him. He's not there. And he disappeared, not a trace, not a hair, not like a piece of chewing gum wrapper, nothing, gone. And no evidence of a struggle or anything. Disappears. They can't find him. They find his body naked like 2 years later. Like, I'm sure you've seen the show, and it's a very common trend where they're found naked or parts of their stuff found in different locations.
Boots. A lot of them are missing their shoes or their boots.
Their boots. It's weird.
And I always see
because they don't fit. Because they don't fit, right? They take them off. It's like, damn, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot doesn't use them. That's right.
That's right.
I always tell everybody on my channel, if I go missing and I'm found without my boots on, something happened because I didn't take them off. I will never take my boots off. But in that series, they find them all the time. No shoes.
Interesting.
No shoes. And then often they'll be found with their weapon on them, like their gun, their side. Like a lot of these Americans, they carry sidearms and they plus a rifle. Never been nothing discharged. Weapons intact.
Maybe I'm reconsidering doing this squatching trip with you guys later
I'm
on.
bringing guns. I'm sorry.
And they had guns. Just you just said they had them. Didn't discharge.
You're
Maybe
the bait.
Bigfoot has psychic powers or something. Jesus.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about. I mean,
I'll be manning the drone. Okay.
watching
I'll
Gary
crash
and I
it
run.
in.
Perfect. Just knowing our luck, Gary will shoot me.
With my camera. That's all I got.
With your camera.
You don't have any guns, Gary?
I do, but I don't bring them in the bush with me. Not unless I'm hunting moose.
Yeah.
Now, are you like? What's the laws on that? Like, my understanding is you can't necessarily walk around the bush with rifles.
You're not supposed to. Yeah, you're
unless it's hunting season.
You're not supposed to bring your. Yeah, unless you're target shooting or something. But
in the woods,
I don't think I would bring. I would maybe bring bear spray because there are quite a few bears.
There are seasons where you could bring a gun because bear season is in the spring and the fall.
That's right.
There's wolf, coyote season. There's all different seasons, so you could. And I think technically up here in the bush, you're not in town. I think if you were to say to a conservation authority or something, look, I've got this for protection. There's bears here, whatever.
Well, it's funny you say that, Gary, because I have a close friend or a friend of mine. I wouldn't say close, but we're friends, who is a conservation officer. And I asked him this question because I was like, well, if I had a shotgun on me and it's, we're camping somewhere, and he would be like, you would be hard pressed to convince me that you weren't shooting something with your shotgun. Out of season, right?
Yeah, and it could be looked at that as well. So it's,
and I said, well, what about for protection? And he said, from what? Like, I almost made it sound like, what, you're scared.
You don't want to answer Sasquatch, Bill. That's not the right answer.
No, I mean, I would never.
So we're bringing pole arms. That's just so I'm clear. We're bringing pole arms. It'll be like, what was that movie with Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins?
Oh yeah,
the one where they fought the bear.
The Edge.
Sorry? The Edge. Yeah, exactly. Where they fight with the big sharp. That'll be you with the big sharpened stake.
Beast or grizzly bear. What was his name?
Sasquatch. Angry Sasquatch.
Yeah, I don't know. But we'll see.
Great. I can't wait to see you guys there. Now
we'll be there, Gary.
You know what? I'm down for it. I've always enjoyed the one thing I've always been comfortable with is in the woods. That's one thing I will say about. I do love the city. Ottawa is awesome. It's great to be.
At the Costco. Yeah, we know.
At the 4, I think 5.
We know. 5. All right, stop it. Just embarrassing.
I think we have 5. We have 5 Costco.
Yeah, you're embarrassing yourself.
Okay, but I've always enjoyed the woods. I've always enjoyed the idea of going out, and I've always felt super comfortable. And that's what I feel some of my nieces and nephews are missing, actually, where they're not getting that, right? They're not getting out, and you can see the high anxiety when it's like, oh my God, I got no bars on my phone. It's like, well, yeah. Guess what? We're in flavor country now. Can you hear the banjos? That's Gary.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Gary. And we'll have to do another video of, the outcome of our camping trip if we make it back. I mean, who knows?
Do you want to do one last plug for your channel?
Unfrequented World. Check it out. YouTube.
Is it on a pod? Is it just do you do podcasts as well?
No, I don't.
Okay, now, so before we end,
Yes.
and Gary, you can stay on with this too, next week or next episode. Not next week, next episode. You can shoot in now, Gary. You're a guest. You can actually suggest something for next episode. I'm thinking New World Order. I'm thinking that leads back into our Agenda 21. That leads back into our COVID. And we could probably loop it back into Sasquatch. I mean, I'm sure the Illuminati Council has a seat for cryptids. Sam Squatch.
I agree.
Okay. So next episode, New World Order. That's kind of the high concept. We have to really flesh it out more than that, but we'll be talking about the various theories about, how everybody wants to come and take your guns.
Not my guns.
Not your guns. From my cold dead hands, right?
Yep.
Thanks for joining us on the OC, and thanks again, Gary, for joining us and all your great discussion and your stories. And we will definitely go squatching with you, sir. Once again,
for
thanks
sure.
for listening.
Thanks,
Thanks
folks.
a lot.
Take care, Gary.
Right.